Shadowman may not be considered a timeless classic up there with the likes of Mario, Zelda, Crash Bandicoot, and the others, but it's a game that represents a very interesting period in game design. Coming out in 1998, it was one of the first kind of overwhelmingly mature action-adventure games, with an interesting take on environmental and level design. It's also, in its original form, borderline unplayable for today's consoles and platforms, and I'm assuming that is the reason that has led to the game being remastered for today's market by Night Dive Studios, and they were kind enough to give me a press key to check this one out. So what we have here is not exactly at the same standards when we saw the Resident Evil games. Those are just full-on remakes. But an attempt at bringing this kind of misunderstood classic to modern audiences for the most part. So the gameplay is essentially as what we described on stream as Voodoo Zelda. You play as the Shadowman here, who must explore the undead world of Deadside in order to find the Dark Souls, and hear him say this line a good 120 times throughout the entire game. But the Dark Souls themselves are Shadowman's version of the stars, or shinies, or whatever kind of MacGuffin you want to think about. And they are used to unlock more of the world, which in turn will gain access to more unique areas and upgrades. Now, there's a great emphasis on platforming, as you're able to shimmy off ledges, make crazily long jumps, and avoid obstacles that would make the temples from Tomb Raider, I guess, look tame by comparison. And the design itself is loosely open or non-linear. You do have a very strict path through the game in terms of what areas unlock and what upgrades you need, but the levels are designed to be very wide in terms of what content is there and where you can kind of go in on your first outing. And while the game doesn't feature a lot in terms of upgraded movement tech or things that change how you play the game, it does feature major upgrades that will unlock new areas, specifically making Shadowman here slowly but surely fire immune. And getting the Fire Walk upgrade that occurs, I think, like 70% through the game, is perhaps one of the best upgrades, I think, in any action-adventure game. So, with that said, what makes Shadowman stand apart from a lot of the other games during its time, besides the gameplay, is the story. That is a Lovecraftian tale of voodoo and monsters and serial killers. One of my favorite parts of this game is the amount of lore that is present in how all the characters act and behave, especially the 5 bosses. Speaking of the 5 bosses, Shadowman Remastered features cut content from the original that never made in, whether it was because it never got through or was left on the cutting room floor. Specifically in the form of several new bosses that were supposed to be in Deadside, and more fleshing out these serial killers. Each serial killer boss now has their own unique level, where in the first game I believe like 2 or 3 of them shared the same area. Now each character has their own unique space, and while they're a little plain, it does flesh out kind of the overall design of Shadowman. Now, the levels, like I said, are very wide, and the game definitely has that 90s level design to it. You'll find lots of paths that are, just out of the corner of your eye. If you miss that one platform or that one door, you can miss an entire half of a level because of it. And we certainly got lost several times while we were playing this on stream. Now, combat is a major point of it, but the enemies are on the basic side. As long as you can just keep moving and shooting, you can pretty much deal with everything, even some of the game's super challenging fights. And they are going to be, I think, patching in some of the lock-on functionality at a later date. But I'm sure the question you're probably wondering, is it worth it to play Shadowman Remaster for today's consumer? And that is a very tough answer. And I think we're going to try and explore that after this quick break. And now for a quick thank you to our current Patreon supporters. And if you're interested in my books on design, they are available at most major retailers. 20 Essential Games to Study is for first-time developers looking to be inspired, and the Game Design Deep Dive series covers the history and philosophy of major genres, with horror coming later in 2021. Shadowman Remastered, and again, this is a remaster, not a remake, is a very interesting game to look at through modern lenses. And it also raised some questions about whether or not, if you didn't grow up playing Shadowman or even heard of the game, whether there's anything for you. While a lot of this game has been updated, especially in the control scheme and the HD graphics, this is still a late 90s action-adventure game. Like I said in the last part, the level design is very wide and can be confusing. This is from an era before quest logs, map markers. There is no in-game map. There is a map that came with a manual, but that's not included in-game. And there is certainly a lack of checkpoints. The only places that the game will save your progress within the level are either at the entrances of each world or at the specific fast travel. But those are very few and far between. And while Michael here is talking about more Dark Souls, from a design standpoint, I think Shadowman does hold up. If you have any fond memories of early 3D platformers, there's nothing here that I would say is unique in today's market. And if you're approaching this with fresh eyes, you may find some of the design not exactly the easiest to get used to. Camera controls especially. You see, the camera is not tied to the right analog stick and has to be adjusted manually. And if you didn't grow up playing games like that, you will probably start pulling out your hair when you have to do this constantly. And the combat is just okay. Again, like I said, this is one of those games where what makes it stand out is greater than the sum of its parts. The storytelling, the aesthetics, and just, again, what they were able to pull off for the time of its original release. But it still, again, has all those kind of pain points in terms of level design and just general confusion that more modern games and modern developers have shied away from. So it makes it a hard recommendation if you didn't play those games or have any fondness for them. As I said, I played this back in 1998, I never finished it, and this was my first time going through the entire game. And the improvements that Night Dive made and what they're going to continue to do, I believe, with more content, does make this an attractive package, but your mileage will definitely vary. And I can already look at the achievements for the game and see that a lot of people probably gave up or did give up within the first hour of playing this game. And I think the first hour will pretty much tell you everything you need to know whether or not you're going to enjoy Shadowman Remastered. So, if you can get past kind of going back to an older era of design, you're going to find a fairly challenging and pretty lengthy experience of action-adventure design. And it does make me, and I think a few of my fans and friends here, wonder if we're going to get other remasters of cult classics like The Suffering. So, with that said, Shadowman Remaster is a solid tribute to the original, and I think it's a good enough remaster to give you a reason to play it. Again, there's enough good here that if you get past some of the sticking points, you'll find a fairly great game. But if you have no love for classic 3D platforming or early technology 3D platforming, then you're not going to enjoy this title. But let me know what you think in the comments below, especially if you were somebody new playing this for the first time. Again, I'd like to thank the publisher for giving me a press key to check this one out. And if you let me take your game in the future, please get in touch. Come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games and fail clutch jumps when we need to. Until next time, have a great rest of your night.